All right, dudes, Champions League Tuesday is done, and I'm not going to lie. I kind of cooked on this one. Look, I make my predictions at the beginning of the stream on Champions League days, and I'm saying I might have gone 2 for 4, which is way better than usual. But the early game, Aston Villa against Club Brugge. Okay, this is one of those sorts of matches that you feel like happens 25 years into the future on a Football Manager save. This is the Champions League round of 16. If you told me this was the first knockout round of the Conference League, I would believe you, right? Like, this is not the sort of match that you normally see. Just brand name reputation going into this. But it looked like a great start for Aston Villa. They scored 3 minutes into this game. Leon Bailey with a beautiful little sweep into the bottom corner. And they must have been feeling good, because I mentioned this going into this tie. For Aston Villa, this is like house money. They're not supposed to be here. They're not usually here. And they're probably not going to be here next year, right? Like, Champions League round of 16. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the club. Maybe not actually, but at least as a figure of speech. Even Club Brugge, they get to play in the Champions League basically every year because they are one of the best teams in Belgium, right? Like, they're going to be in Champions League spots, at least in qualifying every year. So it's almost a little more familiar for them than it is for Aston Villa. So that early goal I figured would help them settle down a lot. Of course, I was wrong. Club Brugge managed to score on basically their first chance of the match at like 12, 13 minutes in to make it 1-1. And this is where the match spent the majority of its time, right? A lot of tension in this in-between period, right? From the 13th minute to when the score would eventually be broken open again. And this was not a fully one-sided game in favor of Aston Villa. Club Brugge has hands. They have proven that over the course of this entire tournament. They are a surprise package. Basically, every team from the lowlands seems to be a surprise package. They're just the one Belgian team that's adding into all the Dutch fun that's been going on recently. And they could have won. Club Brugge could have won this game. Not as like they had a 1% chance thing. I mean, they had chances. There was a beautiful shot that was saved wonderfully by Emi Martinez, because he always shows up in big matches, at least. And it was kind of a volley from the near side, at least on the camera, that was going across the body, and Emi Martinez went for it. And it was one of those saves where he got to it so late that instead of knocking it away with a parry, he kind of nearly pinned it to the ground. You know, like, he got there just in the nick of time with his hand to keep the ball out of the back of the net. I mean, Club Brugge had multiple opportunities to actually take the lead in this game. And then they had a heartbreaking own goal. And I think it was I need to look at it, the 82nd, 83rd minute, 82nd. It was a cross sliding block from the defender. He gets a lot of it. He needed to get a little more of it. He ends up putting it basically top corner to make it 2-1 to Aston Villa. And then it's not like Aston Villa just sprung out and dominated the match from that point on. They put some pressure on, and it was a really stupid, avoidable penalty that Club Brugge gave away. No, I picked Aston Villa. I thought they were the better team coming into this. They're the seeded team, right? They finished top 8 in the Champions League stage. Don't forget that. Club Brugge did not, right? They barely snuck their way in to the Champions League knockouts in the first place, and then they showed off their mad skills in the previous round to get here. But even though Villa was the favorite and I thought they were going to win, Club Brugge played better than I thought. And this score of 3-1 at home for them is it's not exactly a fair reflection of of how this match went. The touchdown in the box, it was like a ball that popped up. It didn't pop up in the air. Sorry, it was a DMCA, so you just end up with me freaking describing it, right? It was a ball crossed to the far post that was way up in the air. The guy who is the wing, it actually turned out, Christos Solis, tried to take the ball down, didn't know Matty Cash was right next to him. Cash gets a touch to the ball first. Solis tries to tackle him because he's a winger. He sucks at it, and he fouls him, and it's a penalty. And then Aston Villa scores the penalty and is going home with a 2-goal lead, which might just bury Club Brugge. It would be very, very, very surprising if Club Brugge even made it nerve-wracking for Aston Villa in that second leg. Club Brugge could not lose this game. Then they would have been able to make it spicy. They lost the game by multiple goals in a way that they didn't deserve to lose the game by multiple goals, and that sucks. I mean, with a penalty, Villa had 1.27 XG. That is a very, very bitter pill to swallow for them. Then the match made up of two teams, I believe, that have basically zero chance to win the Champions League, but that's fun. You know, they get to play each other. They get to settle up. One is going to head to the quarterfinal. Borussia Dortmund at home. They've been terrible in the Bundesliga. This is all they're playing for right now against Lille, who's had a good year in the French league, but they've had a great year in the Champions League in order to get to the round of 16. And if you forgot, they beat Real Madrid, who looks unstoppable now. They beat them when they were a little less than unstoppable. But Karim Adeyemi, very similar goal to Leon Bailey, scores to open things up, and Dortmund dominates the first half. Lille dominates the second half. It was a very straightforward match. You got to love it when they make it easy, right? Dortmund, better in the first half. Lille, I mean, I think the announcer at one point said that it felt like Dortmund hadn't shown up for the second half. Like they just assumed it was going to be fine. And Lille eventually got their goal from the Icelandic man, Haraldsson. He scored. Jonathan David was playing pretty well up top for Lille. Just got to shout out my CONCACAF brethren. But I expected this to be sweaty. Both of these teams basically are playing for their entire season right here. The French league is basically over. Dortmund is like mid-table in the Bundesliga. They've been so bad this year. Yeah, actually, exactly. They're in 10th. Good news for them is that somehow in Germany, 10th is 6 points out of 4th. So they are super not dead for Champions League spot yet, which is really impressive. Lille is 2 points out of a Champions League spot. But you get the idea. This is the season for these teams. And Lille plays a lot of rock fights. Even when they're winning against great teams, it's because it's 1-0 and it's just they're bludgeoning the other team to death. This is how Lille plays. It's how their scores have looked in the Champions League basically the entire time. And I expect the match in France between Dortmund and Lille to be an absolute bloodbath. Not in terms of number of goals scored, but probably just number of fouls and number of nonsense. Speaking of nonsense, this happened. Now, I feel very bad for PSV. They were missing all 3 of their Americans, and that apparently made a huge difference. No Malik Tillman, no Ricardo Pepi, and of course, my boy Serginho Dest has been out for most of the season, but we're just going to count him anyways. PSV has been amazing. Their Champions League run has been great. All of these lowland teams, Feyenoord obviously is loading up the play as well. Ajax in the Europa League, right? All of these teams have done very, very well. They have ruined Serie A's day. Okay, knocking all of them out. This was just PSV looked like an amateur team. I don't know what was going on out there. They didn't look like an amateur team the whole match. They damn near scored more than 1 goal. But there are certain times when you're watching a match where you just go, one team is way better than the other. I don't know why PSV looked like that. I have no idea. They looked outclassed. They didn't, I mean, it looked like they weren't trying. It looked like they were not paying attention. It looked like they weren't focused. It was like somebody had died in the locker room right before the game. I have no explanation for this. If you've watched PSV in other Champions League matches, they did not look like this. They kind of looked a lot like Lille in a lot of ways, where they were just tough to beat, real nose to the grindstone, grit and nails sort of toughness that made it very difficult for teams to break them down, to beat them. They were a tough out, is what I would like. It's not like PSV is going to go win the whole thing, but they were not going to roll over. But they rolled over at home. I mean, they got completely rolled. They gave up couple of goals right away, and then right out of the half, they were down 3-1 at halftime. Could have been worse. They again could have had it. They hit the post in the first half. Probably should have been a goal. But I have no idea what the halftime team talk was. All right, guys, the game's already over. Go home, and we'll replace you with random dudes we found in the stands. That's what it looked like. The second half, the defense was terrible. The goalkeeping was terrible. The mindset seemed bad. They fell apart. Right, you see it happen in sports from time to time. They lost their focus, didn't stay intense, and completely fell apart in a way where it's hard when you get a result like this because PSV has had a very good, very, very good tournament, very good year. But all you remember from that at a certain point is you got to the last 16 and then just got shown that you shouldn't be there. Now, this isn't an indictment of the new format. I had some people in stream that were saying that this is, the new format has set this up. I mean, no. There were plenty of teams that would have rather been in here than PSV. That we would look at their rosters and go, yeah, they're way more talented than PSV, but they also didn't beat PSV. PSV earned the right to get to this last 16. They beat the teams they needed to beat, which are the same teams that are always making it to these parts of the competition. It's not like they prevented those teams from competing. And they earned the right to show up here. And if they were going to get blown out, they earned the right to show up and get blown out. And that's exactly what happened. They showed up. They got smoked. But they earned the right to be there. And I have no idea. No idea. No clue what happened. Now, this game could have been different. Miles Lewis-Skelly got a yellow card and then a minute later committed a foul that I believe was a second yellow. It wasn't given. And that was in the 25th minute when this match was only 2-0 Arsenal. And that could have really changed things. That's worth mentioning. It's funny how things sit on a knife edge. You'd imagine that would get the crowd behind it, that would refocus the PSV team, and maybe they can make a game of it down only 2-0, but up a man for 70 minutes at home. But Miles Lewis-Skelly was actually subbed out in the 35th minute because they were so worried about him getting sent off, and he was clearly on the edge of getting sent off, so they pulled him out, and that ended up being a very smart decision. The final match, the Madrid Derby. Rodrigo started this match with his hair on fire. He scored in the 4th minute, and then on the restart, they played another long ball over the top to him that I honestly believe probably should have been a penalty. It was kind of a tackle from behind, and it could have just started a snowball for Real Madrid, but Rodrigo was amazing, obviously. Julian Alvarez found a moment of sheer brilliance to equalize this game. Obviously, kind of against the run of play because it's Real Madrid at home in the Champions League. But how can you not feel good for Julian Alvarez? He was just talking about how he felt like he needed to make this move because he wanted to be playing in these types of big games. Now he's on the road against Real Madrid in the Champions League, and he's scoring. It's worth remembering that Atletico Madrid is the seeded team in this matchup, as weird as that feels. But Brahim Diaz kind of answered Julian Alvarez with a beautiful goal of his own, dribbling out of a tight space, curling it into the far post. This is a wonderful game. This was top-level football from Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid. Real's taken a 2-1 lead to Atletico, but as long as it's not multi-goal, I'm never going to count out Atletico. They're going to be at home. Anytime it's always down to one leg, that's when a coach like Diego Simeone is going to get a little bit more dangerous, and he's going to be dangerous in this one. I'm going to want to watch this second leg, and I'm going to want to watch the games tomorrow. So we'll be watching them along on stream while I'm playing Kingdom Come Deliverance. I think we'll be keeping track of the scores and stuff. I might see you there. If not, what am I doing? Sign-offs on a video?